there is another maybe significant subject that came up in our conversations when thinking about the interview, and that was the topic of resilience, and the fact that it is something that you also write about, and something that you mention as being important. So in a way, the question would be, whenever things happening in the community or in your professional roles, when they put this to a test, your resilience.
My resilience?
Your capacity to be resilient to a test. How do you find that again somehow? What do you come back to in a way?
Well, when I first started writing about resilience, I didn't think I was aware of it at the time, but I was in part trying to understand myself, because I certainly fit the literature. Resilience also can get idealized, and there's a cost in resilience, and there's a cost in resilient children. There's a price they pay, which also typically has to do with being on the outside. I think, the outcome of my first psychoanalysis was the guy that also, fucked up, was that he understood in a way that none of my previous therapists had ever understood, and certainly wasn't seen in my TA training and TA therapy, that my resilience was based on losses that were never acknowledged, which I think is very characteristic of resilient children. It's like they compensate for all the losses in the family and tragedies, and they, keep everything going and keep everything working. And he recognized that, and that had a profound effect on me in terms of when I'm at the limit of my resources, to be able to stop and slow down and turn to somebody, who cares for me, who I enjoy being with. And, so some of it is, being with friends, family. Some of it for me is music. It's very, very important to me. And for the first time, now that, living in the city and living in my community, and living in a neighborhood, or have a neighborhood where I can just enjoy myself. So there's that different kind of combination of ingredients. Does that?
I think so, yeah. When the price feels too high, what do you do then? I think this is what you're saying. Is it always the same people, or mainly the same people, or the same activities? The same music, I don't know.
It's almost, there's a core group of people, absolutely. And the music varies, but there are certainly favorites.
This happens when this...
Cooking is another.
Cooking. Okay.
Yeah, when I come back from a trip, I'm often sometimes pretty wasted, and I go to the kitchen and start cooking. I love to cook, invite friends over. We cook together, we eat together. That's a big deal.
So, in a way, that is when you end up cooking, basically. That's also saying, like, this is something has been too much lately.
It's like recovering my good objects, let's say that. I have cooking and meals have been an important part of my life, there are particular people who, so like when I'm in the kitchen and cooking and friends are coming over and my head is full of people who love me and I love, and they're dead now, but they're alive in the kitchen. So that's like
like a sanctuary.
It's like a sanctuary. Yes.
This relates to another question I think that we had about knowing when much is too much. When being involved in so many activities feels burdening or feels overstimulating.
I suck at that.
Okay. Can you tell us more about this?
I hardly ever know. I hardly ever recognize when too much is too much. So
it kind of takes you by surprise.
I hardly ever see it coming.
Imagining now that you would be having a conversation with Eric Byrne, what would be 3 questions that you would ask him?
3 questions I would ask Eric Byrne. I would ask him to talk with me about his father. I would ask him what happened to him when the FBI showed up and took away all his papers and his passport. And I'd ask him how he would want to be remembered, which I suspect is rather different than how he has been remembered.
That would be a pretty personal conversation.
It would be a very personal conversation. And part of that comes from, like, when I read that autobiographical fragment that his son published. It just gave such an incredibly different impression of who he was and what he was struggling with and how that informed his work. And then more recently, I've just started reading some of the unpublished stuff that's in the archives and realizing the things that he was struggling with that for one reason or another he never published. And so there's a certain public presentation that is really quite different, I think, than the man that he was.
This is pretty much in line with what we were discussing in the beginning about theory sometimes ending up to be defensive way of thinking about things or moving away from one's own clinical or personal experience. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've enjoyed having the conversation.